Hey TCN, Principal Schreiner here, getting ready for bed, of course, with one of my favorite books that you've been following along with, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And it's been a couple days since we read aloud together, so even though it's past my bedtime, I'm hoping that you'll stay up with me and do a little bit of reading with me as we continue on to chapter 2, called The Vanishing Glass. And when we last left our characters, Dumbledore and McGonagall and Hagrid had just dropped off Harry Potter at his very interesting, some might say very mean or unkind or judgmental family, the Dursleys, his uncle, his aunt, and his cousin Dudley. And he's still a little baby, and he's starting to be known among the wizarding community as the boy who lived, which we don't quite 100% sure know what that means yet, but I'm sure we'll find out as we read. So let's start chapter 2, The Vanishing Glass. Nearly 10 years had passed since the Dursleys had woken up to find their nephew on the front step, but Privet Drive had hardly changed at all. The sun rose on the same tidy front gardens and lit up the brass number 4 on the Dursleys' front door. It crept into their living room, which was almost exactly the same as it had been on the night when Mr. Dursley had seen that fateful news report about the owls. Only the photographs on the mantelpiece really showed how much time had passed. 10 years ago, there had been lots of pictures of what looked like a large pink beach ball wearing different colored bonnets. But Dudley Dursley was no longer a baby, and now the photographs showed a large blonde boy riding his first bicycle on a carousel at the fair. That's like a merry-go-round, like the horses that go up and down. Playing a computer game with his father, being hugged and kissed by his mother. The room held no sign at all that another boy lived in the house too. So one thing that's kind of tricky about this book and this chapter is that the timeline is changing, right? So the first chapter took place 10 years ago, and now we're kind of fast forwarding in time. So it's really important for us to hold on to because the author left out 10 years in the story, probably for an important reason that we'll find out a little bit later. Yet Harry Potter was still there, asleep at that moment, but not for long. His Aunt Petunia was awake, and it was her shrill is like high-pitched, and kind of like squeaky, like nails on a chalkboard kind of. But it was her shrill voice that made the first noise of the day. Up! Get up! Now! Harry woke with a start. His aunt rapped on the door again. Up! She screeched. Harry heard her walking toward the kitchen, and then the sound of the frying pan being put on the stove. He rolled onto his back and tried to remember the dream he'd been having. It had been a good one. There had been a flying motorcycle in it. He had a funny feeling he had the same dream before. His aunt was back outside the door. Are you up yet? She demanded. Nearly, said Harry. Well, get a move on. I want you to look after the bacon. And don't you dare let it burn. I want everything perfect on Duddy's birthday. Harry groaned. Oh. What did you say? His aunt snapped through the door. Nothing. Dudley's birthday. How could he have forgotten? Harry got slowly out of bed and started looking for socks. He found a pair under his bed and, after pulling a spider off of one of them, put them on. Harry was used to spiders because the cupboard under the stairs was full of them, and that was where he slept. So can you imagine that in your mind for a moment? Think about a staircase that's leading from one floor to the other, first floor, second floor, like the stairs that go up by our cafeteria. There's a tiny little room, a tiny cupboard, tiny little storage closet in the wall, and that's where his bedroom is. When he was dressed, he went down the hall into the kitchen. The table was almost hidden beneath all Dudley's birthday presents. It looked as though Dudley had gotten the new computer he wanted, not to mention the second television set and the racing bike. Kind of spoiled. Exactly why Dudley wanted a racing bike was a mystery to Harry, as Dudley was very fat and hated exercise. Unless, of course, it involved punching somebody. Dudley's favorite punching bag was hairy, but he often couldn't catch him. Harry didn't look it, but he was very fast. Perhaps it had something to do with living in a dark cupboard, but Harry had always been small and skinny for his age. He looked even smaller and skinnier than he really was because all he had to wear were old clothes of Dudley's, and Dudley was about 4 times bigger than he was. Harry had a thin face, knobbly knees, black hair, and bright green eyes. He wore round glasses held together with a lot of Scotch tape because of all the times Dudley had punched him on the nose. The only thing Harry liked about his own appearance was a very thin scar on his forehead that was shaped like a bolt of lightning. He had had it for as long as he could remember, and the first question he could ever remember asking his Aunt Petunia was how he had gotten it. "In the car crash when your parents died," she had said, "and don't ask questions." Don't ask questions. That was the first rule for a quiet life with the Dursleys. Uncle Vernon entered the kitchen as Harry was turning over the bacon. "Comb your hair!" he barked, by way of a morning greeting. Whew. About once a week, Uncle Vernon looked over the top of his newspaper and shouted that Harry needed a haircut. Harry must have had more haircuts than the rest of the boys in his class put together, but it made no difference. His hair simply grew that way, all over the place. Harry was frying eggs by the time Dudley arrived in the kitchen with his mother. Dudley looked a lot like Uncle Vernon. He had a large pink face, not much neck, small, watery blue eyes, and thick blonde hair that lay smoothly on his thick, fat head. One of the things that I love about J.K. Rowling as a writer is she writes these incredibly descriptive paragraphs that really help you make a movie in your mind and picture the character, down to the last detail, like details on their face, their hair, their body. Really makes reading a story like this fun because you can picture it the whole way in your brain. Aunt Petunia had often said that Dudley looked like a baby angel, and Harry often said that Dudley looked like a pig in a wig. Harry put the plates of egg and bacon on the table, which was difficult as there wasn't much room. Dudley, meanwhile, was counting his presents. His face fell. 36, he said, looking up at his mother and father. "That's 2 less than last year." "Darling, you haven't counted Auntie Marge's present. See, it's here under this big one for Mommy and Daddy." "All right, 37 then," said Dudley, going red in the face. Harry, who could see a huge Dudley tantrum coming on, began wolfing down his bacon. That means like eating it really quickly like a wolf. Wolfing down his bacon as fast as possible in case Dudley turned the table over. Aunt Petunia obviously scented danger too, because she said quickly, "And we'll buy you another 2 presents while we're out today. How's that, Pumpkin? 2 more presents. Is that all right?" Dudley thought for a moment. It looked like hard work. "Finally," he said slowly, "so I'll have 39, sweetums," said Aunt Petunia. "Oh." Dudley sat down heavily and grabbed the nearest parcel. It's like the nearest box. "All right, then." Uncle Vernon chuckled. "Little Tyke wants his money's worth just like his father. Attaboy, Dudley." He ruffled Dudley's hair. At that moment, the telephone rang, and Aunt Petunia went to answer it while Harry and Uncle Vernon watched Dudley unwrap the racing bike, a video camera, a remote control airplane, 16 new computer games, and a VCR. A VCR is this, when Miss Schreiner was little, you couldn't watch movies on Netflix. That didn't exist. You had to get this like big thick tape thing and put it into this tool called a VCR, and it would like play your movies on the TV. So it was like a device that helped play movies. He was ripping the paper off a gold wristwatch. Whoa. When Aunt Petunia came back from the telephone looking both angry and worried. "Bad news, Vernon," she said. "Mrs. Figg's broken her leg. She can't take him." She jerked her head in Harry's direction. Dudley's mouth fell open in horror. But Harry's heart gave a leap. Every year on Dudley's birthday, his parents took him and a friend out for the day, to adventure parks, to hamburger restaurants, or the movies. Every year, Harry was left behind with Mrs. Figg, a mad old lady. Mad in this context means crazy. It doesn't mean angry. A mad old lady who lived 2 streets away. Harry hated it there. The whole house smelled of cabbage, and Mrs. Fig made him look at photographs of all the cats she'd ever owned. Now what? Said Aunt Petunia, looking furiously at Harry, as though he'd planned this. Harry knew he ought to feel sorry that Mrs. Fig had broken her leg, but it wasn't easy when he reminded himself it'd be a whole year before he had to look at Tibble, Snowy, Mr. Paws, and Tufty again. Those must be the cats that they mentioned a bit ago. We could phone Marge, Uncle Vernon suggested. Don't be silly, Vernon. She hates the boy. The Dursleys often spoke about Harry like this, as though he wasn't there, or rather, as though he was something very nasty that couldn't understand them, like a slug. What about what's-her-name, your friend, Yvonne? On vacation in Majorca, snapped Aunt Petunia. You could just leave me here, Harry said hopefully. He'd be able to watch what he wanted on television for a change and maybe even have a go on Dudley's computer. Aunt Petunia looked as though she'd just swallowed a lemon. And come back and find the house in ruins, she snarled. I won't blow up the house, said Harry, but they weren't listening. Suppose we could take him to the zoo, said Aunt Petunia slowly. And leave him in the car? The car's new. He's not sitting in it alone. Dudley began to cry loudly. In fact, he wasn't really crying. It had been years since he'd really cried, but he knew that if he screwed up his face and wailed, his mother would give him anything he wanted. Definitely spoiled. Dinky Duddy-Dums, don't cry. Mommy won't let him spoil your special day, she cried, flinging her arms around him. I don't want him to come, Dudley yelled between huge pretend sobs. He always spoils everything. He shot Harry a nasty grin through the gap in his mother's arms. Just then, the doorbell rang. Oh, good Lord, they're here, said Aunt Petunia frantically. And a moment later, Dudley's best friends, Pierce Polkiss, walked in with his mother. Pierce was a scrawny boy with a face like a rat. He was usually the one who held people's arms behind their backs while Dudley hit them. Dudley stopped pretending to cry at once. Half an hour later, Harry, who couldn't believe his luck, was sitting in the back of the Dursleys' car with Pierce and Dudley on the way to the zoo for the first time in his life. We're going to pause there. We're about halfway through chapter 2. And tomorrow, we'll see what adventures or mischief Harry gets into at the zoo with Dudley. And as you are going to bed tonight, or maybe if you're watching this in the morning, as you are getting ready to do your online learning on Zern and Raz Kids and Imagine Learning, and sending your teacher photos of the work you've been doing, maybe you can make some predictions about what mischief Harry and Dudley might get into at the zoo. Or maybe you can make some predictions about how Dudley's going to act towards Harry at the zoo, given what you know about him as a character. All right, readers, we miss you. Hope to see you. Not for a while, unfortunately, not till May. But we'll definitely be coming at you with more videos and more read-alouds, more lessons, and you can hear from us soon about the next time that you'll see your teachers during online learning. Have a good night. Bye, TCN.